This is Miss Lee Russell in Business Math B, and today's presentation is going to be on the big economic picture. And we cover this in Project 6. It's the last project in the class, and it's kind of a great way to end the class. You get to wrap up all of the business discussions for the individual businesses, and then we get to take a look at how we measure the economic as a whole. So this would be a good time for you to get out your Project 6. And for those of you in the class live, if you have any questions while I'm going through this recorded presentation, just go ahead and type it in the chat room, okay? As we know, in every business, town, city, country, we try to understand through measurement if we're growing or shrinking, if we're gaining or losing, if there's a profit or a loss. We call these measurements on a large scale economic factors or economic indicators. There are several ways that we do measure the economy, and some of these that you'll see, and you probably have heard them on the news. One is the GDP, Gross Domestic Product, the CPI, Consumer Price Index, and then you've all heard the terminology inflation or deflation. When we talk about the gross domestic product, that's actually the market value of all goods and services that are produced within a country for a specific period of time. So it kind of gives us an idea of the country's standard of living. Just take that in for a minute, because it's on a little bit larger scale than the business scale that we've been working on in all the other chapters. So again, this is the goods and services produced within an entire country within a given period of time. So it's not really a measurement of individuals' personal income. That's not really what it's about, okay? The Consumer Price Index, it's a little bit different. It measures the changes in a price level of what's considered a market basket of consumer goods and services purchased by households. So in the United States, the Bureau of Labor Statistics pretty much states that the measure of the average change over time in prices paid by urban consumers for a market basket of consumer goods and services. So they basically will take things that we all typically buy. I don't know what they are. I don't know if it's like bread, milk, or if it's more like cars, houses. But they take a specific group of products and they look at how much of this is purchased on a monthly basis per family. Okay? In most countries, the CPI and the population census, those are the two that they watch closely. Okay, the third measurement, inflation, it's a rise in the general level of prices of goods and services. That's what inflation is. And again, it's for a specific period of time. And when these price levels rise, the unit of currency buys fewer, right? So if all of our prices of everything in the stores go up, then we can't buy as much with our money. Okay? So inflation reflects a reduction in the purchasing power of our money or currency. So the way they measure inflation is what's called the inflation rate, and it's a percentage change in time, over time. Okay? So that'll give you an idea of the three: GDP, gross domestic product, CPI, consumer price index, and inflation. Those are three ways we look at the economy. Okay? Okay, I'm going to have you turn to an example now. It's going to be in your Project 6 on page 2. And what we're going to look at specifically on that very first line is your inflation rate. Okay? So, as you know from the formulas, and don't forget the formulas are listed in both the teacher notes for the lesson, and I've also put an accumulative formula sheet in one of your announcements called teacher notes. So you can find these formulas anywhere. You can also, here in the Adobe session on the bottom left, you can actually scroll through these documents that are listed. It's all the presentations and download them. There is one here. Let me find it. It's Business Math B Projects. And it also has, here it is, it also has all of the project formulas as if you're doing the projects. So it lists the formulas specific to the project that you're working on. Okay, so back to the inflation formula. You could see that listed. The inflation rate is equal to, let's think about this. You take the current rate minus the original price, and then you divide it by the original price. So if you think about it, it gives you a percent, right? It gives you the difference, the change, and then you divide it by the original percent. So then it'll give you a percentage. And remember, whenever we see the word rate, we're thinking of percents, right? And now it's just basic math after that. So we do parentheses first, and then your division at the end. And there's your rate. And as with any of the math problems we've done in this class, remember it's a percentage, so you move the decimal 2 to the right to get your final percent. So once again, when you just kind of look at this problem listed here, you can see that the math functions are not that difficult. Division, subtraction, right? You know how to do that. So where you're going to have to put the energy in is, again, read the problem. It's asking for inflation rate, so now you've got to find the correct formula to use. That's where your energy is going to go in your problem solving in this class. It's a logic thing, okay? And it's dealing with words, verbal words, as opposed to numbers. So it's a little bit different. So once you've got those two steps, the math's a breeze. Okay, there is example 1. Let's see what we've got for our second example here. Same page. Okay, this time we're going to look at a real GDP. Okay. So notice that the formula listed, real GDP, is the GDP minus whatever the GDP is times the inflation rate. That's what the current is, right? So if prices are going up on things we're purchasing, we can calculate what percentage it's going up, which is called our inflation rate. And then we can take that inflation rate and multiply it by what the normal GDP would be. And we're going to take that away from what it currently is so that we have a real gross domestic product amount, okay? So think through that for a minute, what we're actually doing there. There's no need to memorize these formulas. There's just so many of them, and they're all going to be listed. Just like when you take a large test, when you take your AIMS or your SAT test, you don't memorize all the formulas. They realize there's a lot of formulas. So the formulas you'll be using, you can actually print them out or write them down when you take your test. So I would like you to have some kind of understanding where we came up with these. Try to make a little bit of sense of what they are, okay? So with the GDP, we're now calculating the current or real GDP. So let's fit in some numbers here. Okay, they gave us that number listed in our, that's already a given, the GDP is. And we just calculated the inflation rate. Be very careful on your calculators. I actually had to type this 2 or 3 times because I was in a rush, kept missing zeros because these numbers are so large. So you do parentheses first, obviously. And then you do the final subtraction. And that is your answer for the first line for real GDP. So that is how much was used on goods and services within a specific period of time within the country. Okay, let's look at our last example. It's going to be a CPI example. For this one, the formula is, as you can see, current price divided by original price. And you're going to multiply it times 100. So we're looking at prices of specific items. In our particular table, these amounts are given, so we're going to just use the amounts they gave us to fill in. Again, this is page 2 in your project 6. So we're filling in the current price, and we fill in the original price. We multiply by 100. And there it is. The CPI, again, we move the decimal over twice because we're talking about percents, is 114.4%. Okay, does anyone have any questions on the 3 examples I covered for GDP, inflation and rate, and consumer price index? I'm sure as you're working on these projects, you'll run into questions, so don't hesitate. If you don't have the time to call, just message me. Don't forget you can jump into Adobe. I am in Adobe. The listed times are 7 a.m. and 2 p.m., but I am in Adobe several hours during the day. I try to leave my Adobe room open as long as I'm not in a meeting. Okay, for those of you watching this recording live, as soon as I stop the recording, I will give you a poll question and enter your participation points. For those of you watching this presentation as a recorded link, remember to follow through and answer the 5 questions on the last slide of the presentation. And I do ask that you send the answers to those presentations to me via email. I've listed my email account below that. You can download a writable PDF of the questions. It's the red link at the bottom, at the very bottom of my presentations, okay? I also don't want you to forget these video clips that I have listed. They are absolutely amazing. Most of them are 3 to 12 minutes. There's so many good resources. So if you want to have more of an understanding of these concepts, these would be great video clips for you to watch. Again, like I said, most of them are 3 to about 12 minutes. This one may be a little bit longer since the topic is a little more complex, but I really encourage you to fish through these and watch at least 1 or 2 of them if you can. Okay? Well, I want to thank you for attending Business Math B, the big economic picture, and hopefully you now have an understanding more about economics and economic indicators. Have a great day.